Hello and welcome to another Construct 3 tutorial, somewhat of a series. I do plan on making a series out of these types of videos. Not necessarily a series in the traditional sense from what you may have seen on my channel so far. In previous tutorial series I have created a game from beginning to end. This is not necessarily a game, this is a game mechanic that can be used in many other types of games. And I like to do several of these that cover different types of game mechanics. For example, today's video is going to be covering the 8-direction behavior and how we apply animations to it. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. This is Stardew Valley, and you can see we have an 8-direction free-flowing movement with our character, but when we run or walk in diagonal directions, we are still using the side animation instead of the walking up or walking down animation. And there is a way to control that to make sure that you get that animation, because it would really just kind of look a little awkward if the character was facing up or down while you're moving in a diagonal direction. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to create a new project. So if you're following along, I'm just going to set this project up real quick. And if you are just looking for the 8-direction behavior and animation mechanic, then feel free to skip ahead to where that starts. Otherwise, we have a few things to set up, so we have some context in which to create this game mechanic. I'm going to name my new project 8-direction, 8-dir. And I'm going to stick with the SD landscape 16:9. Go ahead and create that. And I'll make my viewport size and my layout size the same. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a few sprites here. So we can double click the layout and create us a new sprite. I'm going to resize this to say 32:32, and I will zoom in. I'm going to pick a brown color, and I'm going to drop the saturation down quite a bit, maybe a little more luminance in there. There we go. And I'm just going to fill this and set the origin point to the top left. Alright, that should do it. We can exit out of that and rename this border, or whatever you want to name it. And let's go ahead, while we have it selected, go to behaviors and give this a solid behavior. And I'm just doing this so that we have something to work with once we create our character. Let's click on the layout, and we can go to the layout properties here, and let's show grid and snap to grid. And mine is set to 32:32, and that's what I want to use. So now we can grab this and it'll snap into place where I want it. Control, click, and drag out a copy. So now we have two instances of this border sprite. I'm going to take this one and stretch it, and then I'll do the same for this one. Just stretch it across like that. And then I can control, click, and drag out a copy of that all the way to the bottom. And then select this one, control, click, drag out a copy all the way to that side. Alright, actually I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag out another instance. I'm going to make this one smaller, maybe something like that. And then drag out a couple more. So, something like that. We want some obstacles to work with a little bit later. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to double click in our layout, create another sprite, and I will resize this to 32:32. Zoom in, and I want the origin right in the middle for this one. And then I'm going to pick the fill tool and a nice pinkish purplish color here. I'll fill that in, and with my pencil tool I'm going to pick black, and then I'm going to go to configure grid 16:16. That'll give me 4 sections, and it'll show me where the half is. And I'm going to leave snap off, so no snap on that. click OK, turn my grid on, and I'm going to make 2 black lines just like that. So this is going to tell us which way our sprite is facing when we test it later. And to show you what I mean, this is angles in degrees as it is seen in the Construct 3 game engine. So the 0 angle is facing to the right. And that's what we have here. I want to know where our 0 is at all times. Okay, let's exit out of that. With it selected, let's rename it direction. Okay, and I'm going to give it a couple of behaviors. Let's add 8 direction, and then also let's add pin. We will get to that shortly. Now I'm going to flex my artistic skills here. So double click the layout, and I'm going to create a tiled background just because we can. And I'm going to place it, and then I'm going to resize it to 32 by 32. And then I'm going to pick a green color, and I'm going to take the saturation way down and the luminance up, saturation down quite a bit. So, I don't know, something like that. And then I'm going to fill our little square here. I'll zoom in a little. I'm going to take the pencil tool. I'm going to pick a much brighter color. Say something like that. And I'm going to put our size up to 2 pixels. And I'm just going to make some random little pixels here. And then I'm going to pick a darker color. First I'm going to eyedrop this color to get it, and then move our luminance down to a little bit darker color. Pencil tool again, and then go in and do the same thing. Just kind of some random spots in there. Something like that. Okay, looks good to me. And then we're going to take our tiled background and place it in the top left corner, and then we can just drag it out. And now we have grass. And actually I'm going to untick show grid. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and make one more sprite. And instead of, well, let's place it. Okay, instead of resizing it and messing with any of this stuff, we are going to import the sprites that I have made. They are very artistic and great. You're going to love them. I'm going to come down here to the animation frames panel, and I'm going to right click and import frames from files. And what this is, I'm going to import sprites that I have already made. And if you're following along with this and you would like to use these sprites, I have left the link down in the description. You can download those. And if you do download those, you'll need to move these 3 folders to somewhere where you can find them and then navigate to them. And we want to import the content of each of these folders. So I'm going to start with the top one, which is down, and we have 4 frames in here, and I'm going to select all of the frames, highlight all of them, and open. And you see down here it gave us all 4 frames, and the reason that it gave us the frames in this order is if we go back to import frames from files, I have numbered them 01, 02, 03, 04. If you number your sprites in order, Construct 3 will recognize those numbers and import them in the order that they are numbered. So we have these 4, and it leaves a blank frame at the beginning. We can just highlight that, delete it, and now we have our facing down animation. And I'm going to right click on our animation, and I'm going to select duplicate. And then here we can just delete all these except for one. It won't let us delete all of them. You'll get this little message. That's fine. But let's go ahead and right click, import frames from files, and we can move up and go to side, and I want both of these, 01 and 02. I'll open those, and there's our side animations, so I can get rid of this first frame. Let's do it again. Right click over here, duplicate. Let's delete that one. Right click, import frames from files. Navigate to your last folder, which is facing up, and select all of these 1 through 4, open, and delete the first frame. So now we have all the animations that we're going to need for our project. I'm going to go to the first animation where he's facing forward, and you can do this on any of the animations. And with one of the frames selected, I'm going to choose the origin tool, and I'm going to put it at the bottom center. And then I'm going to come over here where it says origin, right click, and apply to all animations. Now, every single frame of every animation has that in the right place. Okay, let's go up to our animation 1, and I want to rename this. I'm going to say ANI, short for animation, underscore walk, and he is facing down. So Annie underscore walk down. Let's go to the next one, and he is facing to the side, so ANI underscore walk side. And the last one, we'll rename that ANI underscore walk up, because he is facing up. All right, so the speed of these, I found that either 5 or 6 works with the speed that we're going to set his behavior, 8-direction behavior at. And it does not matter if loop is checked or not. So we are good to go for now. We will come back and change some things here in a little bit. So I'm going to exit out of that. With him selected, I'm just going to rename it player. And we're going to add a behavior. And that behavior is going to be the 8-direction. So now our direction sprite and our player sprite both have the 8-direction behavior. Let's add one more thing. Double click on the layout, scroll down to input, and let's select the keyboard. And now I have the keyboard object in the game. I'm going to select the tiled background, right click, Z order, send to bottom of layer. There we go. Some of my border sprites were hidden. Let's go over to the event sheet, add our first event, and that's going to be system on start of layout. And on the start of layout, I want to pin our direction sprite to our player. So pick the direction sprite and scroll down to pin to object. We'll choose the object, and that's going to be the player. And we want position only. Click done. Let's go over to the layout. I am going to put our player on the layout, and let's play that. There's our guy, and we have some issues here. You can see that our direction sprite is moving with our player sprite. So the pin is working, but we still have some work to do. Okay, with our player selected, let's go over here to behaviors, and let's set our behavior values. The max speed, I'm going to take this down to 150. The acceleration, I'm just going to say 2000, and the deceleration 2000 as well. Directions are going to be 8 directions, and set angle to no. And then also uncheck default controls, because we're going to set that up ourselves. Now let's go over to our direction sprite, and we're going to do the same to his 8 direction values. So let's say 150 for the max speed, 2000 for acceleration, 2000 for deceleration, and we want 8 directions, and we're going to set the angle at 45-degree intervals, and then untick default controls. Let's go back over to the event sheet. So one of the problems we had was our direction sprite was pinned to our player sprite, just like we told it to here, but it wasn't anywhere near our player. So let's change that. We can add an action and say direction and set position, and our x value is going to be the player sprite dot x for the x value, and player dot y for the y value. So on the start of the layout, we are going to set the position of our direction sprite to our player, and then we're going to pin it. So let's go ahead and move that, drag that up above, and then we can play, and there it is. The position is set to our player, but we can't move it because we took away the default controls. So let's go ahead and get that set up. I'm going to create a group, and I'm going to call this player movement. And then I'm going to create another group and call this player animation. There we go. So under player movement, we're going to add an event to player movement. And that is going to be our keyboard. So let's select keyboard and say key is down. And that key is going to be the A key, because we're going to use WASD to control our player. So hit done, and then I'm going to add an action, and I'm going to say the player, and under our 8 direction, I want to simulate control, and A is left. So there we go. Let's add another action and pick our direction sprite and do the same thing. 8 direction, simulate control, left. And that sets up our key. So I'm going to highlight this entire block of code, and I'm going to Control C on the keyboard to copy, and then Control V to paste. I'm going to paste it again, and then one last time. So we should have 4 blocks of code. So I'm going to go into the second block of code, and I'm going to change the A to D. And then we can go into the action and change that to right. And do it for that one as well. And now we can change this one. Let's say W, and W is up. And same thing, up. And then our last one will be S. And S is down. All right, our player movement is set up. Let's play that and see what we got. So now I can move everything around with WASD. And we have some collisions, and you can see my player is running into the collisions. We will deal with that a little later. But I also want to point out that our direction sprite, I put that little black mark on it to see which direction it is facing at all times. So whichever key I press, it goes that direction. And if I, let's say I press W and D at the same time, it moves me in a diagonal movement. And diagonal down to the left, diagonal down to the right. So we have our 8 directions, and it's moving in 45-degree increments. So everything looks like it is working pretty good. Okay, player movement is done. Well, done for now. We will be back to it shortly. Okay, let's go to the player animation and add an event. We're going to create one event that is going to decide when all the other animations are going to play. And we're going to do that through sub-events. So our first event is going to be the direction. Let's pick our direction sprite. And under 8 direction, we want to see if the 8 direction sprite is moving. So pick is moving, and then everything underneath it will only be able to work as long as this condition is true. So as long as we are moving, then we can run this code. So I'm going to come over here on this side, click, this will highlight the whole block of code. I'm going to right click on the edge of it. I'm going to say add sub event. And that sub event is going to be direction, and we're going to pick is within angle. So I want to show you something here. We're going back to this graph. 0 is to the right, 270 is facing up, 90 would be facing down, 180 facing off to the left. I want to make sure that when we are moving to the right, when we are pressing D and we're moving towards the 0 degree angle, I want to be able to play the appropriate animation. But also when we move diagonal, like I showed you with a game like Stardew Valley, I still want to use that same animation, and I don't want it to change to the up or down animation when I'm moving in diagonal directions. So that's why I have this here within angles. And that angle is going to be within 46 degrees of angle 0. As long as we're moving at an angle that is within 46 degrees each direction of 0, then we'll be able to play this particular animation. So let's go ahead and hit done. And we'll add the action. That's going to be our player. And we're going to scroll down and set the animation. So for moving to the side, we want that animation to be animation walk side. I'm going to hit done. And also, we'll be using the same animation for when we are facing the other direction. So we want to be able to mirror the sprite. So if we go into our player sprite and our walk side animation, you see he's facing to the right. So whenever I play this animation, he's going to be facing to the right. When we walk the other direction, we'll want to flip it or mirror it. But in order to do that, we want to make sure that we tell this one, whenever it is walking this direction, that we don't want it mirrored. So let's add an action, player, and set mirrored to not mirrored. And now we can just highlight this whole block of code, this one sub-event, Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, and now we can just go in and change these values. Let's change our direction, and we're going to do this for walking left. And walking left is going to be, again, within 46 degrees of either direction of the opposite of 0, which is 180. That's walking to the right is 0, and walking to the left would be 180. All right. And we will still want to play the same animation, but we want to flip it. So let's go into not mirrored and change that to mirrored. Okay, let's play that real quick. And when I'm facing that direction, it plays that animation. When I'm facing that direction, it plays that animation. And then when I move diagonally, he's still facing that sideways animation. So that is what we want. Let's X out of that. And I'm going to highlight this block of code, and I'm going to copy and paste, and then I'm going to paste one more time. So we should have a total of 4 sub-events. I'm going to go up to this third one, and I'm going to change this. I'm just going to go within 10 degrees of going straight up, and straight up is at the angle of 270, because we don't need this covering a large area on our angle here. So when we're walking up, we're at 270. I don't want it to play the walking up animation when it's moving diagonal. And we already covered diagonal by going 46 degrees this way and this way. So we're just going to say 10 degrees. That'll cover up, straight up, and straight down. So within 10 of 270. So now we can just change this animation to walk up. And we don't even need this mirrored. So I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to highlight this one down here and delete that one too. So let's go into our last one. Let's go into that and say 10 degrees of straight down, which is going to be at 90 degrees. We're done. Let's change our animation. And that is going to be animation walk down. All right. Let's play that. Okay, and there we go. He faces all the directions that he should be when he is moving, and we have a full 8-direction movement. Okay, let's clean this up a little. If you notice, I'm going to refresh this. if you notice when it starts, he plays through the first animation, which is, if we go back into it, is walk down. That's why he's facing the camera and it plays through these 4 frames and then it quits. And I don't want that to happen, so we can close our player animation. We are done. Let's go back into player movement. Down here at the bottom, let's add one more event. And let's select the player and let's select the is moving. So we want to know, just like in our player animation, are we moving? But this time we're saying, is the player sprite and his 8-direction behavior moving? But I'm going to invert it. And you can either hit I on the keyboard or you can right click and pick invert. And it puts that little X there. So now we're saying if the player sprite 8-direction behavior is not moving, that means he's standing still. Let's add an action and go into our player and scroll down to set frame. And we're going to set the frame to 1. And I will show you why. If we go into our player sprite, and in animation walk down, we have 0, 1, 2, 3. Those are our frames. Notice that animation 1 is him just standing straight up. Walk side, we have 0 and 1. Animation frame 1 is him just standing there, and the same with walk up. Our animation frame 1 is him standing there with his legs not moving. He's not in the animated state on that particular frame. So each one of our animations, on animation frame 1, his feet are in position of him being idle. So no matter what direction he's facing, it's going to set the animation frame of that particular animation to frame 1. So let's go ahead and play that. And see, he didn't start his animation that time because he's not moving. So it just set the frame to 1. But when we walk, it stops. When we stop, it stops. When we go, it moves. And when we stop, his feet stop. All right, that looks good. One more thing I want to change. Let's go into our player sprite and let's pick the collision polygon. And this can be on any frame of any animation. We're going to move all these points, well, 2 points, the top 2 points, down to about his waist area. And I'm going to say the X of 0 and the Y of 50. And then I'll highlight this one, and I'm going to say a Y of 50 and an X of 29. Okay, then I'm going to right click on any one of these points, and I'm going to say apply to all animations. So now every frame of every animation has the same polygon collision box. We can exit out of that, and we can also pick our direction sprite and scroll all the way down in the properties and untick initial visibility. Okay, let's play. So now we don't have that direction sprite showing, and we still have all the functionality. Our animation stops when it's supposed to. We hit a barrier or a wall and he's not moving anymore, so it's playing that frame 1 of whatever animation it ends up on. And for some reason he is still trying to play his animation there. Let me see if this changes. Let's go into our player sprite and let's actually tick loop on each of these animations. And let's play that. And that actually solves our problem. Okay, so I lied earlier. We do want loop ticked, and that will prevent our frames from, or our animations trying to play when we are not moving. Okay, another thing we did was we set our polygon box around his waist so that it gives some depth. So now it looks like he's actually running into a obstacle, and it's not his head that's running into the obstacle. So, all right, that is it. That is how it works. It is very simple. I hope you liked my beautiful animation, and I hope this helped you out for whatever project you have going on. It's super simple, but it accomplishes a lot and very effectively too. But you can just set up this one system for your player movement and the animations of that player's walking or running animation, and you can put this all in a group and not have to worry about it while you continue on with the rest of your project. Alright, that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you like this style of video. I plan on doing a few more like this and keep this series ongoing. I will be putting out the other types of series as well, where we create an entire game from beginning to end. And I am working on 2 pretty large projects at the moment. Hopefully one of those will get done very soon and be up on this channel. Until then, be sure you're following me on Twitter. Links are in the description, as well as on my homepage here on YouTube. I also have a Facebook and Instagram set up for the channel, but Twitter is pretty much where I live. Alright, hit that thumbs up to show your support and subscribe to the channel because I have a ton more content coming and you won't want to miss that. Alright, I will see you in the next video.